Good evening. One of the hashtags that were trending on Twitter today was hashtag Privatisation Big Scam. Our media, television in particular, hardly discusses economic issues except on the budget day. And if you switch to business channels, all you see is values of shares floating on the screen. There is most certainly more to economics than just the stock market. So while I could have picked any other topic of the day, I thought Sirf News could serve you better by blasting to smithereens this propaganda, which is obviously backed by the agitating, corrupt, and inefficient bankers, besides the countless socialists that plague our national thinking. To further their propaganda, they are saying that several private banks had failed before Indira Gandhi had nationalized all banks. So, how is it guaranteed that banks that the Narendra Modi government wishes to privatize will be successful after they turn private? Wrong question. The question clearly shows these Twitter users do not know the virtue of the private sector. If you are not a depositor in a bank and you don't own its shares, how are you affected if the bank shuts down? Whereas if the bank belongs to the public sector, if it collapses, the government of the day takes your money to revive it, even if you were not a depositor or shareholder of the bank. This was what had been happening for all the years and decades since Indira Gandhi's era, where a bunch of inefficient and corrupt bankers made a bank fail, and you had to compensate for it for no fault of yours. While the public sector has shrunk, this is still happening. A group of officials of the Punjab National Bank, if you may recall, the scam of a few years ago, kept passing on credit to Nirav Modi and never reported that the diamond merchant was not returning the money. When finally the corruption was exposed, your money was used to keep the PNB alive because PNB is a public sector bank. They could do it because PNB is a government sector bank. This was like a section of the population of West Bengal and adjoining states investing in Sharada Chit Fund and Rose Valley, and Mamata Banerjee making the whole of Bengal compensate the stupid depositors. My sympathies for the poor who had lost their money, but it must be said they were not intelligent people. And that they were not intelligent was not your mistake. And yet you paid for their folly. Of course, it must be added here that the Narendra Modi government's idea of reviving Yes Bank falls under the same category. Friends, the private sector is good only if the government appreciates and accepts the theory that both private profit and private loss are private. It is not good to have any business, including the business of banks, to be in the form of a state-owned company. Because when a business proposition does not work out, a businessman immediately winds up the business and invests elsewhere. Whereas the government feels obligated to keep running the business using the money of even those people who are not responsible for the company's failure. Now consider this. How many people does a company hire? Even a big one. 1,000, 5,000, 1 lakh? Add to that a few lakh or maybe 1 crore of depositors and shareholders. Even if the workforce of a government sector company is as big as 1 lakh and it has stakeholders that total maybe 1 crore people, remember that 130 crore Indians pay to keep just those 1 crore people well fed. Whether or not those employees perform and whether or not depositors and shareholders were wise enough to trust that company with their money. Dear socialist suckers, how is this fair? Tune in tomorrow for our analysis of yet another news story. Thank you for being with us.